Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on global peace. We have our world famous speaker, Professor Edward, Dr. Talib Rafael, and Dr. Tamanna. Dr. Edward, what you want to discuss about global peace?
Well, this is a very important subject. Hold on. I'm going to see if I can get my headphones to be louder for you so that you can all hear me. Let's see here. Just a second. This will only, this will only take a second. Okay, good. Okay, I think I've got it. All right. Can you screen? Oh, wait a minute. Have I lost you? Are you still there? Can you still see me? Okay. Can you do a screen share? Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, good. Okay. Do you know how to do a
Yeah.
screen share here?
Dr. Sharif, he wants the screen share.
I can't figure out how to screen share. No. Settings. You need more coffee, I think. Okay. Well, yeah, I was trying to screen share. I don't know if you can do that with the system, Sharif. Settings, let's see here. Mirror, touch appearance, screen share. No. Okay, you can't do a screen share. I'm trying to get something up. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
I think Sharif has dropped off. Oh, no, he's back. He's back. Okay, sorry. It sounded like you dropped off for a minute. Okay, he seems to be back. Can you do a screen share if you can hear me? You need better internet connection, I think. Can you share my screen? Okay.
Dr. Edward, I do not get anything from my side.
Okay, you can't screen share. Okay, I was looking for whether you could do it from your end. Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and talk. What I was going to do is we're talking about world peace today. I want to say three things. I don't do the show very often, but I think since Sharif invited me, and I know that you are very much in favor of technology and prosperity, and these are very good things, and you know what the situation in the world today is, I think it's important that, I discuss with you what's going on. There's kind of three things I want to talk about. I want to talk about what's going on in the Middle East. I want to talk about the global situation, which, of course, if you're not in the Middle East, if you're in Bangladesh or the U.S., does affect us. And there's a few things about domestic issues that also impact world peace. First, concerning the Middle East, I was going to show you part of the video that Hamas took of murdering people, cutting heads off, trying to cut heads off, butchering people, women, children. I was going to show you the videos of the charred bodies. I want to make everybody understand that this is simply murder. This is carnage. This has nothing to do with whether you disagree or agree with Netanyahu or anyone else. These are some of the most vicious crimes I have ever seen. People who have watched these videos are sickened, rightly so. There is no excuse whatsoever for this. This is Hamas committing these things. One of the videos has a Hamas member, after he's killed people, on his phone, talking to his parents saying, "I've just killed 10 Jews with my own hands." And the parents are saying, "Congratulations, you're a hero, Allah Akbar." That's the kind of degeneracy we're talking about here. And those parents trained those murderers when they were children to do these things. You have to understand exactly what we're dealing with here. So for some people call for a ceasefire. I say no, more fire. Israel is going to keep firing. They're going to send in their military until all the hostages are released and Hamas surrenders unconditionally, or they kill or capture all the Hamas members. That is going to be the conclusion of what's going on. If you've never heard the phrase "never again" from Jews who had 6 million of them killed in World War II, that's what it means. Never again. Hamas is going to be wiped out. Gaza is going to be occupied by Israel. Hopefully Israel will be able to pull in, for example, Moroccans who are Muslim Arabs, Dubai has Muslim Arabs who very much believe in prosperity and peace and so forth. Hopefully, Israel can bring in some of these others to help reconstruct, just like we did in Germany and Japan after World War II. Gaza is going to be gone. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to understand this in a global context. Basically, Iran was the one that backed all of this. Frankly, Hamas members are too stupid to do this by themselves. Now, I want to congratulate President Biden for standing not only behind Israel, but behind the Ukraine in the Soviet attacks. He's been very, very supportive, and this is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. But you have to remember, these things don't happen in a vacuum. When President Obama was inaugurated a few months after in 2009, hundreds of thousands of young Iranians rose up in the streets against the dictatorship in Iran. And rather than say we support you, President Obama said nothing. Now, by the way, I was in Moscow in 1989, just as the Soviet Union and the bloc was falling apart. I met with dissidents in Moscow, and they told me, we heard the words of Reagan and Thatcher, and that gave us courage to do what we did. And I wish that Obama had done that, because it would have given the young people in Iran the courage to overthrow their dictatorship. And of course, as you know, President Biden, unfortunately, when he got into office, essentially gave Afghanistan back to the Taliban. He lowered a lot of the sanctions against Iran, meaning that instead of having about $5 billion in oil money, they ended up with $85 billion. And just before the attacks, he gave $6 billion to the Iranians. Basically, he was signaling that I am weak, I am stupid, you can go ahead and attack. Now, of course, I'm glad that Biden has changed his opinion on this. I congratulate him, but you've got to understand the global situation. You have to understand also, China has been very, very smart. What they did was for 2 decades, they allowed freedom and capitalism, at least to the extent of having entrepreneurs there, flourish. So they were able to build up a lot of wealth there. Of course, a major industrial country now. They're having a lot of problems now. That's a whole different discussion we can have. But you have to understand that they are part of the new Cold War, the new axis of evil, with basically Vladimir Putin, who's butchering people in Ukraine, obviously Iran, as well as with their little cronies in North Korea and Venezuela and a few other places. We are in a new Cold War. Countries have a choice. You can either side with the open societies, the free societies, or you can side with the thugs. One of the interesting things, by the way, is I've seen pictures, and Sharif, you've sent some of them to me, of Dhaka, which is a beautiful, glowing city, right? And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Tel Aviv. 100 years ago, Tel Aviv was not there. It was simply a sandbar. Now it's a glowing city. Some of the best technical work is being done in Tel Aviv. That's a choice. I want to say one more thing, okay? Because it's important that everyone hear this, that you hear this. And we have problems here in the United States and in the Western countries as well. You would expect that the best and the brightest at Harvard University and elsewhere would come out in the streets and demonstrate against the thugs who did this. And instead, they've done exactly the opposite. They sided with the killers. This is just how sick a lot of our intellectuals are in the society. And I want to say something, because Sharif, I know you're a Muslim and a peaceful one. It's interesting. Right here in Rockville, Maryland, where I live, I was working together with Muslim friends, Jewish friends, Catholic friends on some of the school reforms here. We have a very peaceful place here in the United States. I love it. But you got to remember, when hundreds of thousands of people come out in the streets in London and in Washington, D.C., demonstrating in favor of these thugs, they are the worst enemies of Muslims. They advertise that we can watch babies' heads being cut off and charred bodies, and that's okay with us. So if you want to show, which side you're on, everybody has to demonstrate against and condemn Hamas. They have to work for its destruction, and they have to understand that we are in a new international Cold War with China, with Russia, with Iran and a couple of their toadies. That's the international situation. So talking about peace and let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya, it's not going to work. Winston Churchill understood you couldn't negotiate with Hitler. We had to basically bomb them into submission and into surrender. Yes, lots of civilians were killed. That's unfortunate. That's what happens in war. In Japan, we did the same thing. We probably saved millions of lives because we didn't have to invade Japan, millions of Japanese and American lives, because we went in there and we bombed them until they surrendered. Israel's going in very purposely. They're not trying to kill civilians. They want to rescue the hostages, okay? But remember, Hamas hides behind civilians. That's what they do. They train their children to be killers. If you want world peace, we need a new renaissance of rationality. The sort of thing, Sharif, that you promote, technology, prosperity, those kinds of things, that morality is what has to dominate the world. I'm going to get off now. I've talked enough, but I want to make it absolutely clear that that's what we're facing. We can't just sing Kumbaya, hold hands and say we love people. We're going to have to go through a very hard time. Hopefully it'll be a Cold War. Hopefully it won't be a hot war with China and with Russia. Okay. Hopefully we'll defeat Russia in Ukraine. That's the world today. You want peace? You better look at what happened in World War II. You better look at what happened in the Cold War, where fortunately we didn't have a world war. I'm happy about that. We're in the same situation today. We need a revolution in the world in favor of liberty, in favor of reason, in favor of an open society, in favor of prosperity, and in favor of people of all groups, like right here where I live, Muslim, Jews, Catholics, doesn't matter, Arabs, Chinese, living in peace, make trade, not war. That's my statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Edward. Dr. Talib Rafal, what do you want to discuss
Well, I
about global peace?
now, because I'm not with Hamas. I'm not a Muslim Brotherhood person at all. But I'm not against, I'm against all what Israel is doing now, particularly in the area of bombing civilians. And it's almost like throwing an atomic bomb there. Somebody even called for that. I think what Edward needs to do is look at the pictures that are coming out of Gaza now. I think the pictures that he referred to, I saw some of them. They're horrific, of course. There shouldn't have been any killing. But the Israelis are breaking international law. That's important to know. They are not acting in accordance with international law because they're bombing civilians, killing them, and saying that they want to get to the hostages. Hostages are not going to be there. They will be destroyed like anybody else under the rubbles. Is 9,500 Palestinians killed in the last month. More than half of them are women and children. What do these people have to do with Hamas or the war between Israel and Hamas? I think that Edward needs to look at some of the pictures that are coming out of Gaza now as we speak, because we can't talk about world peace when a country like the United States is only country that's standing behind Israel and telling it you don't have to stop this war. I think like in Ukraine, I think Israel should stop the war and Putin should stop bombing Ukraine as well. That's the way I see it. Thank you so much, Dr. Thank you for bringing us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tamanna.
Yes. Yeah, so I feel that, the whole Dr. Edward was also saying about Harvard students coming out. I mean, I guess universities, again, and academia, for example, the university I come from, they again are anti-right. They are supporters of some kind of terrorism, and they are supporters of, these kind of, they take sides in a way that, like supporting certain kind of elements. So it's nothing new to me because that happened in my university as well. That keeps happening in my university. So yeah. Now, as far as Israel is concerned, Israel has faced a lot. I mean, as far as I can look at it, it's like they have suffered a lot, and that is why the reason for their sadness and brutality simultaneously working uh, is because because that area is definitely surrounded by Muslims who are hostile to Israel. So and that is why in the 40s US supported them, and state of Israel was formed, and so in US they have an extremely strong lobby, and so. But as far as Palestine is concerned, I feel what wrong did the civilians do? At least we should have some ethicality to war. At least what purpose does it help? Fight people who are actually involved in the whole thing, not the civilians and children and raping women. I'm just not in favor of it. So Hamas and Israel, what's the difference between Hamas and Israel then, if they're also going to do the same? So to make them the culprits, they have to stop this war and make them the people. I mean, I don't know who said this thing, that Hamas show make Al Qaeda look innocent, you know so I mean, that is the kind of brutality they're doing, and if they do this, people are not going to support them beyond a point. Even if the friends of Palestine would be like, we are not going to support them, they are like supporting terrorists. So I mean, that is the whole thing. But I'm for sure, I'm not in for supporting killing of children and women, and raping of women. And Iran, for example, has been supporting terrorists. And this is the kind of, and it's a nuclear state. So the danger which the danger which they face is the danger which the world faces is imminent. So that is why we have to understand this in a way that a genuine diplomatic and dialogue approach has to be there, and trust has to be built. Whenever there are wars, trust is something which is the first thing to break. So the trust between the two parties have to be there. And for example, Egypt, for example, Turkey, many of the friends of uh, of Israel, at least to some extent, and Russia, for example. So the world is now, global peace is must, because if you see, the world is divided into camps. So the West is on the other one side, and Russia, China, Pakistan, Iran, and many of the African states who have suffered in the hands of the Westerners are supporting this kind of a thing. So they're supporting Russia. So I mean, Russia has a different story. I'm not getting into that. But what my personal take on this thing is that, people need to talk in genuine, empathetic way. Empathy and ethics are the two things which have to be taught in the universities. Two things: empathy and um, and these two things, have to be really ethics. Have to be taught in the universities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Talib Rafal. It's actually biggest political challenge because both of the countries like Israel and Palestine, they have different political agenda, and it's become problem for general people. So what do you think, as a politicians, how we can resolve this complex problem?
Problem is very clear. As Dr. Tamana said, people have to start talking to each other, not bombing each other, not killing each other. The Palestinians have suffered for so long, not just the Jews suffered. The Palestinians have suffered for the last 75 years of being deprived of their rights, being deprived of their country, being sent as refugees, just like now Israel is planning to do with Gaza. Now Israel cannot do that anymore because the world is not with them. The world really is in the streets now, and the streets are saying what they need to say now. I believe in that completely. Sorry, Edward, I'm not with you on this point. But Iran and Russia and China are another group of people that are opposing the United States and Western allies because the Third World War is on the edge now. World War III is on the edge. The world is coming through a very difficult time now. I live in Amman, Jordan, and we are very much neighbors to the conflict that is happening in Gaza and the West Bank. But I cannot but say what I'm saying because we live that. We live it every day. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Sharif.
Thank you, Dr. Tamanna.
Yeah, so I guess definitely we have to resolve the tension between Israel and Palestine, because Palestinian, as sir is also saying that they're not the ones who have not suffered. They have also suffered equally. So what's the wrong which the civilians have done? Everybody has a right. This is our human right to live a safe and comfortable and need to have right to life. Every country's like India's Indian constitution in article 19 talks about right to life. So every human being has a right to life. Even animals have right to life, forget human beings. So when they do have right to life, nobody can take it away from them, be it any element. And worst, if it's a state, if it's a state sponsored terrorism, that's the worst kind of thing. So many of the world's countries are engaging into these kind of activities. So we have to, if we want world peace, we have to collaborate. We have to collaborate and with each other, and do away with elements who are destructive to peace in the world. And so for example, technology, AI, etc. Why are we talking about ethics now? Because all these things will fall into place if we have ethics. If children as young as 1 or 2 have are taught moral stories from the childhood, and not the way when we were younger we were taught about all this thing, but about new issues like nuclear proliferation, or for example, environmental, or terrorism. So these things have to be taught to students from the age of 1 or 2, so that by the time they're 15, 16, they can themselves critically analyze what is wrong going on in the world, and they should come forward in a way that things become easier for the world, rather than making it difficult for people to survive and have right to life. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Talib Rafael, what's your view about this Russia and Ukraine war? And after that, this Palestine issue also a big problem. So
Well,
what's your
again,
view
Russia
about
is something
the
between
present situations?
Russia and the United States. And the United States has played a big role in provoking Russia. So I'm not very much pro-American in this. I'm not pro-American altogether. But these are 2 examples of how America can spoil the world with its policies, with its stance. And the fact that Russia is bombing Ukraine is not good. I know that. But the fact is also that Ukraine was going to join NATO, and Russia feels threatened about it. Now, in the past, the United States has declared the war against Cuba. Remember when the missiles were there? And it was a big thing because Cuba was at the borders of the United States. Well, Ukraine is at the borders of Russia. Actually, Kiev was the capital of Russia for a long period of time. So Ukraine is part of Russia, whether we like it or not. That's what I think. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sharif.
Yes, so as far as Russia and Ukraine is
Thank
concerned,
you, Dr.
I mean, my personal take is that, I mean, you can't completely blame, I mean, as a realist, looking at this particular position, I mean, in international relations, I would say that Russia is not totally at, they're not like totally mistaken, because as Doctor has himself said that, the countries such as Russia have been facing the eastward expansion of NATO. Now that no country, having a system which is respecting territorial boundaries is the basic principle of a state. So what Russia is doing is protecting itself, you know. And so Russia is wanting to protect its own territories. And if anybody, nobody wants to be encircled by enemies, right? So nobody is going to be have the power to destroy Russia. So that's all thing. But Ukraine, for example, obviously, I mean, has its own territory and has a right to its sovereignty. So the West, for example, is pumping in money. They're having their armament industry growing. That's amazing for US, for that matter. But so, I mean, I'm empathetic to both. I understand their issues, but again, till the time we do not talk, and hypocrisy of the Western world has to come out, first of all. Secondly, autocrats in the world have to be destroyed, be it Russia, be it Iran, Pakistan, or China. China, I can't say anything because it's a communist state, and they have their own way of looking at things. So they are not they are they're not like democratic like many of the Western countries, or other democracies. They also have a democracy, but the democracy is in a different manner. I mean, again, I understand their system also well, how it works, and it's worked well for them. So why not? So the belt and road approach, for example, which they are currently heading, so many of these African nations are there. So, but what China is doing is it's trying to expand in a way that it emerges as a developed nation, in a way that they become become as mediators. Right now also they did the mediation between two of the Middle Eastern countries. So so it's rising up in that particular fashion, which is definitely not very acceptable to US. So now they are making inroads into Africa also. So so Russia and China are wanting to get into. Russia was there always, but now more so, because Africa has become a major zone of conflict. So what they are trying to do is they are also trying to come into the whole picture. So many of these African nations are getting attracted, and they have nothing to say against Russia or China. So we have to understand that particular aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Talib Rafael, how we can protect human rights, and what's your closing remarks for today?
The human rights are very clear, and they have been stated after the Second World War. All of these human rights are being violated now by the Israelis and the support of the Americans to Israel, because the war must stop there. The bombing must stop. The killing of people must stop. That's the only way you can negotiate some kind of peace there. It's the only way you can release your hostages, actually. Qatar has been trying to do that for a period of time, but they did come out today and said, you cannot do any release of hostages if you don't stop the bombing. Now, that's important to know. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree. So, human rights are important to the well-being of people, and what we need now is that, right to life of people, and also their right to having a minimum amount of food for themselves, rising above the world, which is Africa, for example, has seen poverty a lot. So South Asia has seen poverty. So we need to what these are the basic rights, protection of women, children, and so all these things have to be seen in a particular lens, so that the best possible solution of human rights for the people belonging to developing world is there. And killing of people, for example, America has a very simple legal policy to gun culture. So I mean, what are they preaching human rights to others when they are themselves not ensured about that? So AI, etc., my personal take would be to take AI in an ethical way, so that it helps uh, African nations, South Asian nations, Southeast Asian nations to become more they come out of poverty, and establishment of democracies in many of the non-democratic states. These would be some of the basic human rights. Democracy is a human right. And somebody ruling you from above, I don't think it's in this era is acceptable, because we have seen Arab Spring, many of these Iran movement, for example, the girl who got shot and so was killed by the state. So state sponsored terrorism has to end, and human rights for human beings. Why do we have human rights? Because we all are human beings. So there are some certain rights which are intrinsic to us for living, for having a nice life. So these things have to be there. Thank you, Mr. Sharif.
Thank you everyone for joining today's session. I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible. Thank you, Dr. Talib, and thank you, Dr. Tamanna. Thank you, bye bye, and take care.